Welcome to our Mobile Revolutionary series, where we share stories, tips, and trends about all things mobile from industry thought leaders and practitioners. Brought to you by HelpShift. Today's topic will be all about bots. And the question of the day is, to bot or not? I'm your host, Janice Lee, and our special guest today is Ben Terrill, Director of Customer Experience at Brex, the financial OS for growing businesses that many of us know and love. He's here to talk about how bots can help to improve your customer's experience while helping you to reduce the cost to serve. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you.
So glad to have you. Before we get started, can you just help the audience understand your role at who you are, your role at Brex, and then we'll get into where you are in your customer journey.
Yeah, so I oversee our customer experience operations at Brex in Canada, as well as a number of other sort of strategic operations teams. And then based on my background in AI, also own most of our sort of chat-based and AI-based initiatives that we're deploying to our team and to our customers.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about your customers. But before we do that, how about if we share a little fun fact about Ben? And I heard through one of our interviews with you that you might have some skill related to Legos.
Lego bricks, Janice. Yeah, well, that's funny. When I was 12, I won a Canada-wide Lego building contest. The contest was called the Billy Brick Beaver Building Contest, and I guess in true Canadian fashion, I built the best beaver in Canada.
Okay, so I have to ask, a beaver would be that animal that lives near rivers and streams, is that right?
That builds dams out of logs, and I think causes great havoc on the ecosystem.
Okay, so you replicated a beaver using Lego bricks.
That's correct. Yeah.
And you won?
I won, and a little 12-year-old Benjamin was also the most excited boy in Canada, probably for a long period of time.
So how big was this Lego beaver?
He's like maybe that big. I didn't have a lot of Lego. It's actually, in retrospect, I'm quite pleased that I was able to do something with so few Lego bricks, but it worked.
That's so awesome. So I learned something because I've seen every episode of the Lego Masters show, and I never realized that there's no such thing as Legos. So you've taught me something. It's properly called Lego bricks.
Love it. Absolutely, that's correct.
Okay, so let's talk about Brex. You know, Brex is a very well-known brand in sort of financial services, financial tech, right? Who are your customers? Like, who do you serve today? And are they the same customers that you've served before?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, our first customers were sort of the well-funded startups, primarily based in San Francisco. And those customers were pretty technically savvy, pretty understanding of what it's like to run a startup. So we were often on the same page, and growing very, very quickly. And fortunately for Brex, as those customers have grown, we've grown, and the customers we serve now have kind of expanded beyond just the sort of classic tech startup to what's ultimately becoming most businesses in America, which has led to a really significant change in some ways in how we engage with our customers and how we support them.
Yeah, so if you think about it from the beginning to where you are now, has your customer experience changed? Your customer experience goals changed?
It has, and I think most support orgs probably would follow a similar journey in terms of how support is delivered and then the goals that we're providing. In the beginning, our goals were to just service our customers through any means we could, and that often meant a very small team working very long hours to provide as good a service as we possibly could with those people. Obviously, as we grew, like that just didn't work anymore. We couldn't have a dozen hardworking people that could, yell across the desk to somebody else what was going on in scale. And we really needed to build a lot more sophistication and process into our customer experience operations. And at the same time, provide like a standard experience or customer support offering to our customers. So over the last year and a half, we've really tried to deploy sort of mechanisms of scale that allow us to scale our business to be a much larger customer support org. And at the same time, try and enable our customers, in many cases, to do the things that they would traditionally call us to do directly by themselves. So really teach them and enable them to service themselves when it's needed.
Got it. So in the beginning, would you say that you had, compared to now, would you say that you had more of a high touch model back then?
Yeah, I think, and we had a high touch model out of necessity in many ways. Like we were still building key features in our product, and in many cases, the customer support org would serve to do those things that ideally should be done directly in a product. So the amount of times our customers would speak to us in a month was much, much higher than it is now. And of course, we always want to be here for the best possible service, and we always want that interaction we have with our customers to be as good as possible. But let's make it for the things that we need a person involved, not the things we don't, like changing the email address on your account or something more simple.
So before, what did the typical customer support experience look like? Was it, I go on the website, I go to the help center, and then instantly I'm put into contact with a customer service group?
Yeah, I mean, you'd either chat in, phone in, or email in. Chat has always probably been our bigger channel, but it's gotten bigger over the last year, of course. Somebody would answer your request really quickly. Like in many cases, the experience might feel like you were calling, if you called us by phone, like somebody would answer after the first or second ring. And provide a lot of the support. And because we were a growing company, like a lot of the things, like we'd launch a feature that might be like ready and secure and stable and all those things, but maybe that additional little ability to configure it was missing. And we would need to deploy our customer support org in order to ensure that we were actually able to like support that feature for our customers. So our support team is really sort of the glue that would allow our business to grow rapidly and ship more exciting features to our customers.
Got it. So if you had to sort of articulate what your primary support goals were back then, how would you describe it?
Get it done. Keep our customers happy and just get it done. Whether that meant Herculean efforts and long hours or at all costs, it was get it done. Okay. And I think we still that is still our goal. Like we want to make sure that our customers have the best possible experience, but now there's a lot more methodology and process around it. And we know that it's not just solved by putting more people on the problem. We know that AI, we know that improved help center resources, we know that improving the product, we know that being deliberate about how we encourage our customers to contact us is the way forward. And so that's kind of been sort of what we've sort of seen over the last year as our org has developed a little bit, that we've really been investing in quite significantly.
Got it. So what you still maintain is, respond as quickly as possible, give them the best service that you can. But you've had to now design in, how do we scale operationally and efficiently at the same time? Exactly.
And consistently too, right? I mean, it's not possible for somebody to just say what's this question, or how do I answer this particular question now. We actually have to have a proper structure in place for our support org that allows us to scale to many more people. So we're probably 4 times bigger than we were a year and a half ago, and I would predict that we'll be much bigger than that probably in the next year.
Got it. So if you were to look at your, let's call it your issue volume back then relative to your agents, and your issue volume now relative to your agents, has that grown proportionally?
No. So we have a lot more issues now with a lot fewer agents supporting our customers, and we also have a lot more customers. Mm-hmm. And so we've been working on a lot of ways to make our team more efficient, ensuring that they kind of have the resources available at their fingertips to answer our customers' questions more accurately, but also being deliberate about why our customers might need to contact us. And a lot of the reasons our customers contacted us in the past were things that we could build into the Brex dashboard for them to actually service directly themselves. So that sort of question that we really track, which is contact rate, that number we've been able to bring that number down while still keeping our customers really happy.
Got it. And that is expressed in consistent CSAT scores, I assume?
Yeah, so CSAT is kind of one of our North Stars, and I like CSAT because it's sort of it's pretty quick and it's for each individual agent, and our CSAT score is still it's been consistently strong the last 2 years.
That's great. So you were able to scale, you took on a lot more customers who come with issues, but you were able to really bring down your cost to serve relative to your customers and your revenue count. That's why we invited you on, because I think what's enabled you to do that has been bots and automation, right? And you seem to have a pretty strong opinion about bots and automation. So let's get to the question, which is, a lot of customer service leaders are thinking about bots, the question of to bot or not. And we see a little bit of reluctance, I would say, in terms of adopting a technology that might be seen as maybe compromising the customer experience or losing control of the customer experience. Tell us about your relationship with bots. Why do you love them, or why do you hate them?
Yeah, I think like anything, it's a tool, right? And you can't deploy every tool in every situation and expect good results. I think that with our philosophy at Brex with bots is, I think we've taken a very deliberate approach to not introduce friction into the customer support journey. And I think when you hear about people not liking bots, and honestly, sometimes people will even chat in to Brex and assume one of my support team is a bot because they get back to them so quickly, which is quite funny. But when people don't like bots, it's because they're not solving their problems, right? And so we really took a very low friction approach to that. I don't believe that people don't like bots. I think people don't like bad bots. And we've really tried to focus on this approach that if we can't answer the customer's question, if our system doesn't identify the customer's question and have a good degree of confidence that we're going to provide an answer, we're going to pass you off to our support team as quickly as possible. Because I don't think there's anything more frustrating than reaching out to a customer in your moment of need. Your card doesn't work. You're worried there's fraud. You can't log into the dashboard, and being presented with more friction in addition to the friction that we've already sort of caused on you by our product not working in the way you expect. So we really want to try and manage that. But the truth is, there's many things that our customers chat in about that our bot is fantastic at supporting them on. And when our bot does respond, we found that it is quite accurate and actually able to sort of address their questions and properly deflect their query.
Yeah, I want to get to who your users are and sort of how they feel about bots. But before we get there, if we were to deconstruct your bot journey, at some point you decided, okay, we've got to solve the support, opportunity or challenge in a different way. And you started thinking about what bots could do. What was that trigger? What made you go to work one day and say, you know what, this existing model support is not going to help us scale? What was it?
Yeah, I think I would actually say this is an accurate point for any leader that's trying to deploy like AI and bot in an organization. Is you need to make sure that the business is on side, right? And I don't think there's like a universal yes at a lot of businesses that yes, deploying AI in your customer support journey is a good idea. And so we really needed to make sure the business was on side. And so we took a lot of time sort of working internally at Brex to make sure that this is something we are comfortable deploying, and wanted to make sure that in doing so, we weren't going to diminish the customer journey. So I think in the back of our mind, we always knew this was something we wanted to deploy. We wanted to do it at a point when the economics made sense, and at a certain time, a certain size team, it doesn't make sense because you're not going to deflect enough volume to justify the investment. And we had enough internal capability to properly support and manage this platform. And one thing I've learned that is, and I've seen many times, is an organization might make the investment in the technology or the setup, but not really understand what the ongoing sort of sustainment cost of that deployment is to properly let it sort of function the way it should. And it took a point at Brex until we were at a scale where that actually made sense. So thankfully we're there now, and we've been able to justify sort of the ongoing investment in this. But I think without that, you really run the risk of something that might be amazing on day one, but actually gets worse over time.
Got it. Did you actually take on a bot initiative where you said, okay, I'm seeing around the corner at some point soon, this model won't hold? Or was it more sort of reacting to, increasing growth in volume and just, it's almost like I have to get it done now?
Yeah, well, I think the advantage and the challenge of a business like ours, where we've seen such incredible growth, is that a 5% growth rate or a 10% growth rate is a very different reality for us. And we definitely wanted to make sure that we were slightly hedged against the potential upside there. Like, if our business is growing that fast, we can't build our support team that quickly. It's impossible. And so that ability to make sure that if we grew even faster than we expected, and that has happened at points, that we had the proper sort of capabilities internally to service our customers' needs was really important to us. I think that was kind of the driving factor that kind of allowed us to kind of invest in this initiative. And now we've sort of been able to see some of the initial gains by deploying AI in the customer support journey, which I think has sort of justified the business to continue to want to invest in it.
Got it. And what were some of the challenges that you had to overcome in order to convince yourself and the rest of the organization that this was the right move? What did you have to consider?
Well, all the bad bots out there that might not be improving the customer experience, I think, is the biggest challenge. I think everybody that's interacted with a support organization, whether that be primarily in a B2C space, but in a B2B space as well, has probably encountered a bot that was a little bit frustrating. And we, at Brex, customer experience has always been something that we've cared deeply about, and we just didn't want to risk that for the sake of maybe an incremental improvement in economics or the ability to scale. So we had to convince, and I had to convince the business that we could do this in a no or low friction way that would ultimately improve our customer experience. And so I think a well-deployed bot can improve your customer experience. Let's say somebody's chatting in and there's a 5-minute wait on chat. An accurate response by a bot the moment they chat in is a much better experience than waiting 5 minutes to get the same response from a person. And so we really took that sort of philosophy and tried to dream big on making sure that this wouldn't diminish our customer experience.
So then did you start with 1 or 2 specific use cases where you said, let's just try out what kind of impact this would have on CSAT before you?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I think you want to start small and slowly pick use cases and gradually expand the scope of the bot. And again, because we were doing this sort of no friction model or low friction model, if the bot didn't understand, the bot just passes you off to a person. So as a consumer, you've encountered no more friction than if there was no bot deployed. But we wanted to measure when the bot should understand and see what happened. And so we've been sort of iteratively adding use cases to the bot and monitoring performance. And performance for us is customer satisfaction and the number of conversations we're able to effectively handle with the bot, and slowly add more use cases, like step by step. And so we didn't want to do 20, 30 use cases on day one. We wanted to do 10 and then maybe add another 5. And we've kind of been doing that over the span of months. And that's allowed us to really have a good feel for how this performs before we kind of move forward to the next level. And also ultimately build internal confidence with the team.
Got it. So as we're taking live questions, we'll get to them. But if you think about all those use cases that you've enabled, what are your top 1 or 2? Like from the customer standpoint, what does that use case look like for them?
Yeah, I think, for us, it's about your card, right? And when your Brex card, if you go to a merchant and it doesn't work, like that's a pretty pressing thing that you want solved. And so customers chat in about that frequently, and as I would if I was a customer. And there's actually some simple ways that they can usually solve their own problem with that. So go into the dashboard and make sure you're not at your limit, that sort of thing. So our bot handles that stuff really well, and we've been able to actually sort of drive a lot of customers to sort of identify why perhaps their card didn't work and fix it themselves, rather than talk to a team member. Other one, because we're a sort of a corporate credit card, and our customers are often issuing cards to lots of users, is maybe they issue a card to a particular user and that user doesn't get their card. So some debugging and making sure that they actually are able to sort of find their card or reship a card to them directly. We can do that, again, directly through the dashboard. And when a customer chats in, we can steer them to the dashboard and allow them to do that. Again, it means we don't have to sort of respond to the request directly, and ultimately they get an answer quicker.
Got it. So it sounds like a lot of the use cases start while they're in the dashboard and they're trying to get a question answered or resolve an issue. They just pop open the chat, start talking, having a conversation with the bot, and the bot can, in some or most cases, help them resolve the issue on their own.
Yeah, in some cases, and in most cases not yet. And even in our analysis, I think if you looked at all of our chat conversations over the last 6 months, and I think broadly speaking, you could break things into sort of four quartiles. The first is customers asking questions about things that there's an answer probably on our help center. It's just a simple generic answer. And about a quarter of our questions are like that. So those are things that are great for the bot to handle. And so we focused a lot of our attention on there. The next one is this idea of sort of like personalized read-only questions. So maybe they want to know what their card limit is or when their next bill is due. We're just telling them. We're not asking them for anything other than the initial question. Those things we can automate with a bot, but maybe not quite as well. The third quartile are things that require kind of a read-write relationship. So maybe they want to change something or a more complicated flow. Again, in theory, that's probably possible to do with a bot, but much harder. And then the fourth quartile is just stuff that we're probably always going to need a human for. It's like maybe a customer that doesn't identify a transaction on their bill, for example. And so on the optimistic side, maybe this is something that we could have 50% of our customers experience when they chat in. But right now, we're really focusing on that first quartile where there's more generic answers that we can provide our customers that are exactly what they're looking for.
Got it. So let's take this one audience question that's kind of related to what we're talking about. If you think about all those use cases where you have a bot, they start with a bot conversation and maybe they don't end with one. When's the right time to bring a human into that support experience?
So we, again, kind of that point of where we don't want friction. That's a good question. One that we talked about a lot at Brex. We bring a human in the moment we sense frustration. So if they ask a question and we don't have a good answer, we bring a human in. If they ask a question and we do have a good answer, and then they ask a question that actually might give the same answer again, we send them to a human because clearly that first answer didn't give them what they want. And then if they ask a question and we do know what they're asking, which is actually true in many cases, but we don't think that responding to them by message will service their problem, we route them off to a human. And so this again, our philosophy is avoid friction at all costs and make sure our customers are getting what they need.
I love that. So I think in that use case where you said, if they ask a question and the bot has the answer, but the user actually responds with the same type of question, it sounds like your goal is you shouldn't frustrate them by making them repeat themselves because clearly they didn't understand the answer.
Yeah, exactly. And we've all interacted with bots where that happens, and it's so like the veil that this might be some sort of intelligence piece of software goes away, and it's just frustrating, right? And we really wanted to try and avoid that.
Got it. So you've got some logic in there that says, something like if you recognize a repeat question, then
exactly pass it off.
Got it. Okay, so another question from the audience. Do we build this ourselves or do we go to a vendor?
I hear that question all the time. And in a previous life, I worked for a vendor that made an AI solution, and we'd hear that a lot. I think that like most software projects, people tend to underestimate the complexity. And I think when you begin to get into AI, the complexity gets exponentially more difficult as you grow. So I think there's a point when you would want to build it yourself. I think Bank of America's Erica bot is probably one of the most celebrated bots. I think that bot cost them around 30 million, all said and done. That bot's fantastic, and they have a very large team, larger than many people's entire business, supporting and iterating on that bot. But on the smaller side, or before you can justify a team essentially to maintain this, I've always been sort of a proponent of using a vendor. The nice thing about a vendor too is I think you begin to learn the things that you don't know, right? And so even at Brex, with the experience we've had, we're learning how to properly structure our response taxonomy to make sure responses aren't too similar. And I'm able to build that capability in my team internally that's maintaining this bot through using a vendor solution. So I think you're still building some internal organizational knowledge, even if you're not building the piece of software yourself initially.
Got it. One more question. So when you first deployed bots, what was the reaction from your user base? Did the ones that had previously gotten this high touch agent-based support now interacting with bots? Was there
So yeah, I mean, I for the first little while, I looked at every conversation because I was just so happy that our little bot had come to life and was working. So it's interesting. I think what people will find is often the reaction is no reaction. The reaction is they've come, the bot's answered their question. You read their question and you read the response, and you're like, yep, this clearly answered the question, and they're gone, right? I mean, people don't save. Occasionally, people will be very polite with our bots, which I always appreciate, but people don't save the pleasantries for the bots, right? They just get the answer and they leave. So often that reaction is no reaction at all. We have monitored CSAT, of course, and that hasn't taken a hit with the bot being deployed. I think if we took a stronger opinion on this and introduce more friction, we'd probably deflect more volume, but we'd probably see that CSAT begin to drop a little bit. So far the reaction has been quite good from our customers, though.
Got it. So speaking of your customers, over the years, we've seen this slow, maybe it's not too slow, but certainly a shift from the different channels that users prefer to interact on. And, nowadays, everybody's mobile first.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to be on their phone, stay on their phone, and everybody prefers more, chat interactions than live. What have you observed about your own user base?
Yeah, and so I mean, certainly chat's has increased. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, particularly in like a B2B setting. You can imagine if you're like an admin, you're busy your day, like open a little chat window on your Brex dashboard while you're solving a problem, while you're multitasking, or maybe if you're in a meeting. And so we've certainly seen chat grow, and chat for Brex now is approximately half of our volume, which is pretty exciting. And we see chat actually have CSAT scores that are similar to phone. So our customers seem to be getting quite satisfied on chat. Email, I think, is where we see the lower CSAT scores. There are differences between our customers, though. And as we've moved from that classic startup founder persona that is, as you say, always on their phone, to a broader sort of offering to most businesses in America, we've certainly seen phone pick up. And I think that's understandable, right? I mean, those businesses probably have had a previous financial solutions provider. They probably would call them. And so we're seeing a lot of that kind of normed behavior sort of come in, I think, and seeing phone tick up a little bit. But chat is still more than 50% of our volume, which is super exciting for us. Right. I think chat also offers, in our space, the ability to be really precise, right? If you have to say an exact number or you have to share financial details, like it's written down, whereas the phone is not always the best channel for that. So, and you can go back and view the conversation later, which I think is always helpful for our customers. So I think there's some actual experience improvements that the channel itself provides, specifically with chat.
And are you seeing much sort of channel switching or omni-channel happening in these interactions?
Yeah, we will. I mean, sometimes we have interactions that can't be resolved right away. So you call in and we need to sort of speak to a team as maybe it's a weekend and maybe that team's not available. So sometimes we see these interactions that will extend beyond that initial call. We're generally the driver of that sort of channel steering, and email is a great channel to follow up later. What gets interesting to us is down the road we may be able to deploy a solution like if you call and you're on hold for a few minutes, maybe we offer our customers the ability to press a button and give given a link to start chatting with us later and that sort of thing. So there's some sort of other kind of, I think, intelligent channel steering things we can do that when our SLAs aren't where they need to be, ensure that our customers are still getting the best possible service.
And speaking of your SLAs, you measure NPS, right?
We do. And
you have an interesting way of trying to determine whether NPS is going to go up or down about the number of, is it successive interactions?
I'm trying to think here. So
you had once commented that the fewer people that a user speaks with.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, I think this is, again, is a product of us growing. When we had a team of 12, if you called into Brex, I mean, you're actually probably much more likely than 1 in 12, but you had a high chance that you're going to always speak to Janice, right? And as our team has grown, that magnetism towards a particular support person has decreased. And what we've seen in a lot of feedback from our customers is that having the same interaction, and still some of our customers call and they specifically want to talk to a specific agent that they had a great experience with, which I always love to see. But as our team has grown, the chance to speak to a consistent person is less. So we've deployed a number of things. We kind of call them this idea of magnetic routing to try and get, when you chat in, that Janice always gets Matt on the team. And we really try and route the individual over. One, quality of the interaction improves because Matt knows all about you. And two, your experience improves because you begin to have a little familiar face at Brex. So there's a bunch of sort of technical things that we've been able to do to kind of route customers between channels in a way that hasn't caused us to have to change our staffing or our tiering model or our queuing or anything like that.
That's super cool. So basically the experience I would get if I'm, if I've had multiple interactions is, Matt, so I call in or email in or chat in and I get Matt, and Matt's able to recall our last conversation. He's got all the history and the context.
Exactly. And this is especially helpful in email where there's an interaction happening between you and the agent, and it might transpire over a couple emails. Like it's just a much quicker way to get a resolution.
Yeah, love that. I'd love that experience myself. So if you had to sum up best practices, what are the 4 or 5 best practices for deploying AI bots in the customer support journey?
Yeah, I mean, the first, we touched on this a little bit, was start small. You don't need to, Rome wasn't built in a day. Like start with some use cases that are really compelling, that you can provide a good response for, that your customers will find valuable, and iterate from there, and just consistently try and kind of iterate and build, and eventually you'll have something that's functioning quite well. That also means you don't do something and not know why something else breaks. Like with AI, you could train a new intent, and that intent could break the accuracy of several other use cases. And so if you're doing that in a big push, often you're going to see performance change in ways that you don't necessarily have a reason why. Second one was managing expectations. I think there's sort of a managing expectations arrangement you need to make with your customers, but I think more importantly, internal stakeholders. Like you're not going to deploy a bot and all of a sudden deflect 30% of your customers without something happening that you don't expect. So you really want to make sure that people know that this is a gradual process, and it's sort of a task that you're going to undertake over a longer period of time before you get really big results. I think the next one, sorry, go on.
On managing expectations, it kind of sounds like, you have to be clear that there is some type of experimentation phase at the beginning, right? That you don't just, you can't deliver on all of the metrics.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the analogy of your bot being a person, and the person, starts out in kindergarten and he or she learns more as they go through school, is actually pretty accurate. I mean, you deploy your bot on day 1, and it's a baby bot, and it's just learning to talk, and soon it's going to get smarter. So, and that metaphor is one I think we even used at Brex to sort of ensure that people kind of knew that the progress this was going to make.
That's so funny.
Yeah. I think it's important to know what success looks like. Like, are you optimizing for cost to serve? If you're optimizing for cost to serve, maybe a high friction experience is fine. That wasn't our philosophy, but it's possible. Or is it customer satisfaction? Is it CSAT? Is it SLA? Like, you really know what the metric is you're trying to move before you start the project, or else you're going to end up, not knowing what you benefited from.
Makes sense.
We definitely were hyper aware of friction. And I've talked about this a little bit before. Adding additional friction to our experience was something we really wanted to try and avoid. And then I think, as I mentioned before, like, we sort of took our volume and broke it into quartiles and knew that one quartile we could service with bots, one was going to be a little bit harder. For us, knowing how we deploy the technology to address that next quartile, like the read-only responses, has been important. So we've tried to build that into a roadmap now. So we know in a quarter, we'll need to have the systems in place, we'll need to have the APIs available, we'll need to have the buy-in from the engineering part of our organization to support these use cases. And you got to check. I think you need to chart that out in advance, because there's a fair bit of work there, and some sort of security and privacy concerns you need to work with as well.
Got it. It's about designing the customer experience in advance so that where to.
Yeah. I mean, and making sure that if you do want to tackle those more difficult use cases, it's going to require some engineering lift, and that's an investment by your org. So again, you prove the value from that first quartile, the easy stuff, and that maybe justifies the second quartile.
Got it. And then the last, maybe one more best practice is, so what I heard, start small.
Yep.
Manage expectations with your internal stakeholders as well as your customers. Know what success looks like. So define your success metrics up front so that you can set those expectations. And then look at all the points in your customer journey and know what points of friction you want to design out, assuming over time. And then the last part was have a roadmap for.
That's right. Yeah, just plan it. And then I think this is tying back to one of my first points there, is having stakeholder buy-in. Like, you really will probably need support from more than just the customer experience org if you're going to make this as successful as possible.
Great. Yeah, well, I think many years of experience, which has been very insightful as we've worked with Brex and other types of customers, that I think we've seen different types of use cases that we don't always predict.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it must be fun to sort of always be learning and evolving.
I mean, this is why I love the space, and I think the space of customer support, customer experience is so interesting now. It's not just about the equation of adding staff and answering questions and managing SLA. There's this awesome nuance of how technology can make your customers' lives better. And yeah, I mean, I think the next 5 years are going to be a really interesting time for AI and bots in terms of the customer support journey.
So given how much experience you have with this, what's the most memorable user interaction issue that you or somebody on your team has ever had to tackle? There's always the one or two that you just cannot forget.
Oh my goodness. That's a good question. Particularly, yeah.
When I was 16, I actually worked in a call center.
Oh.
I did. I was actually a collector though, so I wasn't doing inbound. I was doing outbound. And the stories that I would hear, 16-year-old calling on people on behalf of a credit card company, people who were sort of delinquent on their payments. The stories that you would get is just like, I still remember them, and it's like decades later.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how, and I have so much empathy for this. When a customer calls in and their card doesn't work and they're taking investors out for dinner or that sort of thing, like the hoops that my team will sort of jump through to make sure that they're unencumbered and kind of can sort of do what they need to is pretty cool. So when that does happen, we're like, that's a pretty pressing moment. I'm trying to think of anything I can talk about in specifics. Nothing runs off the top of my head right now.
Well, I think everybody can empathize with that experience where you're at a something meaningful. You're at a nice dinner, maybe with a with a partner, with a date, with family members, with colleagues, and your credit card doesn't go through. That can be pretty embarrassing. I think we all empathize with that. So the need to get an issue like that resolved quickly, I think it's things like that make the work rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, and it's things like that when you do it properly, I think help build sort of a lifelong trust with your customer.
Totally. So what's next for Ben and Brex?
That's a good question. So I think our little bot's growing up. So he or she, we have not assigned a name to it, but he or she is learning more language and learning to understand things more. I think that we'll continue to sort of try and, like, again, sort of that roadmap statement, like invest in making it able to sort of speak with our customers in a much more personalized and curated way. And then I think we want to try and make sure that our customers are supported sort of where they're kind of seeing the interaction with us. So may that be phone, chat, email. Like, we really want to be able to support them in whatever channel they contact us in.
Well, I love the fact that your little bot is growing up.
It is.
And we definitely want to keep in touch and let us know how it goes as it's learning all these different languages, assuming you're now able to roll it out to other countries and users in those other languages. Super exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ben, for being our guest. We look forward to having you back and sharing more stories, more bot stories. Now, I have to ask you as a final question. When anyone says, should I bot or should I not, what should the answer be?
Asterisk, it depends.
Love it. Watch the
Yeah.
webinar.
Watch the webinar, exactly. There you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you, Janice.
So we're going to stop our video stream here, but we're going to continue to take questions live through the question and answer panel. So feel free to stick around if you've got more questions, and we will do our best to get those responses to you. Thank you for watching.